Greetings and salutations, this is Jason Silverain, and today I'll be taking a look at Hyperspace Dogfights. Now first of all I need to make a disclaimer saying I received this game for free as part of the beta test for the September 2018 release of a major patch. Though that's not really affected my judgment about the game. Now this was developed and published by Sleeper Games. It's available on Steam for £8, the price I think is fairly reasonable, and was originally released in May 2018. It's best described as a love child of Luftbrasers and Risk of Rain. It's a very similar dogfighting game, just set in a futuristic setting, and if you played Luftbrasers, you'll notice a lot of similarities regarding the style of arena that you'll be taking part in. However, rather than being able to customize all the sections of your ship, you instead start with a default ship and you earn items along the way, much like Risk of Rain, and those items can stack, and there's a lot of them. There's over 50 weapons, there's over 40 active items, basically items you use, and there's over 100 different passive items. And each of these can change your style of play, add minor buffs, or actually completely screw you over. The very nice thing is when you pick up weapons you can keep swapping between them. Now, unlike most wave shooters, which this game is mostly focused around, there are levels, there's 7 zones. I've only managed to get to the 3rd zone. It is very hard, because game difficulty increases as you continue, much like Risk of Rain. And you will soon find that you can be really either overpowered or an extreme disadvantage depending on the random luck of the items you've been able to afford or collect. Now, I'm just going to go into the options. I do like the options because they show the developers got a sense of humour. Now first of all, this is the main screen, which you come to. This lists all the items your ship you currently have has. It would be nice to see in the future a sort of itinerary of all the items you've unlocked or collected throughout the games overall. A bit like Risk of Rain. Again, this is one of the things I think the game's lacking. It's got lots of nice features, but there's a few things here and there that would really polish it a bit more. Now, for example, this is your active items. So the default one you start with is flares. Very useful, actually. Then you've got a booster pack, which means you just go faster. I mean, you get these very nice small descriptions. Some of them aren't really clear what the weapon does. But I do like this, where with certain weapons it will actually show their attack patterns. And yeah, there's a couple of weapons out there that are more dangerous to you than they are to the enemy. And they're kind of broken down into sort of laser weaponry, kinetic weaponry, and melee weaponry, believe it or not, even though you're in a dogfight. The melee weaponry tends to act like lightsabers traditionally do in Star Wars, so you're swinging your big giant laser beam swords, or whip, or different attack patterns to be honest, but if you hit enemy fire, you ricochet it away, or sometimes straight back at who is shooting at you. So, heading to options, it's broken down into the typical game control, video and audio. If I do have one minor gripe, when I first started the game, when the tutorial popped up, the main title screen was rather confusing. I was like, what the hell is going on? How do I access the options? I wasn't sure if escape would just quit the game entirely, or if it would take me to the options screen. Thankfully, unlike most games, this game doesn't need subtitles, because everything's done in text anyway, so that's quite handy. Now, screen shake. This can be changed quite a lot, so every time you get shot or there's an explosion, it just... there we go. You can even turn it off completely if that makes you motion sick. Now, I am very tempted to... I usually keep it on light, but I'm very tempted to turn it down to bland or mild, because by the time you're in the later levels, especially with certain items you've got, you are purposely ramming into enemy shots, and the screen shake can cause all sorts of lag, which is horrible. It doesn't happen that often, only when you've been hit by a dozen different projectiles, but it can happen. hit lag amount, again, that's frustrating. Later levels, but in the early game it's not too bad. It's a nice way of adding challenge. Screen glitch. This is kind of story-like, because you are essentially someone who's uploaded their mind to a computer and piloting a small fighter through VR. I mean, the story's never really explained at all, but you get hints of it here and there through the chatter, and you get different bits of chatter depending on how you're performing or rather missions you get. Now, you can get quite a lot, and when you get heavily damaged, you'll constantly glitch anyway. So, obvious or faint is what I recommend for beginners, just to avoid frustration. I do like the fact you can change your aimer, though there are certain pickups that will just make your aimer disappear entirely and be replaced with like a straight line. So I'll just go back to my previous one. I do like that one actually, but yeah, I'll stay with that. You can make this opaque so it doesn't get in the way, or just even make it pretty much invisible, because at the bottom of the screen will list the items that you've collected. You don't want it all the way full, because it'll just block what you can see in the actual action. Attack tells is one thing that's also quite interesting, because you'll get lines appearing on the screen showing you where you're being shot at from. So that can actually get you in more trouble than it can help at times, because when you're overloaded with things shooting at you, it can cause some real panic. But I really like it because it adds to the franticness of the game. Control-wise, now there has been many requests for controller support, and that is one of the things coming in the patch. I've not yet tested the controller support, but so far the game seems to work very, very well with keyboard and mouse. You can actually just play it straight keyboard, to be honest, and you won't be losing much, because the only thing I'm doing with the mouse is left click shoot, right click to do a, well, it says jump there, but it's more like a boost that makes you temporarily invincible. Video is very simple. I mean, there's not really much to describe here. And again, audio, very, very simple. Not much to really go into. Now, the game's audio is something the developer boasts about. I must admit, I'm not a huge fan of the music, but it doesn't put me off the game either. It's a real hit or miss. I think the music's good for the genre and good for the setting, but it's just not my cup of tea. There we go. That was worrying me for a second there. The game actually does take a little while to load up as well, so there's a few times I've tried to run the game and I thought it's crashed. Now, you may be wondering, oh, that's a little dull, you can't change your fighter right at the start. And you can. After you've unlocked certain things, you can proceed to change your fighter. This is my favourite one because it just gives you random unlocks. Just so anything you've earned throughout the game, you've got a chance of pretty much getting it as a piece of equipment. And you can see next to the title, I've earned 23% of the items in the game. I did actually a very long run, over an hour long, just before I started doing this review, and I must admit my hands really hurt. So when I go into the game, please forgive me if my performance is not very good, because I must admit my hands are hurting quite a bit from leaning on the keyboard. Again, I'm looking forward to when those controller support issues have been, you know, sorted out and it's been completely finalised. Now, this is one of the ones I unlocked as well, which is a melee style ship. I find it very difficult to use, but it's really quite interesting. I don't really understand what the active item does with that one though. Ones I still need to unlock is this one where I need to ace an entire zone. Essentially, acing a level is not getting damaged. That's a lot harder than it sounds. And here we go, defeating every Zone 2 boss. Now there's quite a lot of bosses. I think there's 10 bosses in total, and it randomises the bosses that come up. So that's an area I'd like to see sort of enhanced in later patches perhaps, more variation in bosses. But the bosses that I've seen are all very different. I've had a screen-filling battleship. I've had 2 small cruisers that were heavily armed and had shields which would rotate round where you were, so you had to keep manoeuvring around them and between them and shooting at them to damage them. I've come across a squadron of fighter aces who are incredibly fast and seem to be dedicated to shooting you down. So there's lots of variation. Now, as you can see, as the sprites are a little blocky. I say not too bad. It's very different to the backgrounds, which are quite smooth. Okay, I'm just going to fall down. And before I continue, I'm just going to look at what equipment I've got this time. So, my active item, covering fire algorithm. Ooh, bullets storm in all directions. That's a new one. I've never had that before. Processing power engines. Oh dear. Great speed, bad accuracy. So I'm going to be really fast because you can get it in reload time. Shields, which the shield one is very, very good. It makes you practically invulnerable as long as you're good at quick maneuvering and dodging as well. And this one just seems to increase my speed. And I seem to have a melee weapon I've never seen before either, the Hyper Lance. Okay, this will be fun to experiment with. Whoop. So, like Luftwaffes, you've got the ground level, which changes depending on which zone you're in. The first zone's like a desert and rather smooth, and then at the top you've got your cloud layer, which you can't really fly into and damages you. Now, that is very powerful. That is very powerful indeed. Very difficult to aim. Oh gosh. Okay. Now, unlike Luftwaffes, which just seems to have, you can take so many hits. Oh god, what's happening? Which one am I facing? You can only take so many hits and then you explode, but if you manage to dodge enough for long enough that you regain all your health. This, you have health bars. Let's move into the next zone whilst I'm describing those. Now, you see in the top left, those squares, those are your health bars. Now, you take shots that will lower your shields. If you take any hits, then you'll take a bit of damage, and each of basically 3 shots per health bar on average. But if you avoid for long enough, your shields come back up. So, relatively simple, but can be quite intense when you're on very low health, because you start getting visual glitches and all sorts happening. Below the below the health bar is your credits. I think they're credits. I'm not exactly sure what they're called. They don't seem to be named. But there are your currency in the game. And in between levels, you get these like supply boxes that are worth different amounts of currency. It starts off relatively cheap. By your sort of 19th level, they're like 300 odd in price. So the price goes up quite quickly. So there's my mission for this zone. Now you'll get credits for destroying most ships. Oh god, this spear is very powerful. Also, you have front and rear thrusters, I should mention. So you have quite a lot of maneuverability if you can get used to it. I always forget I've got the rear thrusters. So let's do our mission. Where are you? Now you see those lines where they're directing where the bullets are going and where they're coming from. Those big red marks, those are rockets. Oh, and I took damage there. I am still getting used to this melee weapon. I'm just trying to practice shooting down ammunition with it. You see, it changes colour and it fires off in directions you've struck it. Now, minor gripes I do have with the game is, well, the inconsistent art style. I like the ships. The ships are nicely done. The backgrounds, however, are a little lackluster. On the third zone, sorry, you have like a cities in the background, but they are literally sort of grey blocks with black rectangles on them for like tower blocks. They look rubbish. Harsh, but true. It looks like someone's done it in MS Paint. It's not great. It might be just going with the simplistic art style, but I mean, this is what actually almost caused me not to review this game in the first place, because the shoot 'em up genre is very extensive. There are a lot of good games out there, a lot of old school classics. You get some real sleeper hits like Lufrazers, and then you get all the flash games like on Newgrounds, which, you know, are really simple and, well, very typical. It seems to be a style of game that a lot of people using Game Maker sort of begin with. Interesting. I'll stick with my current use item. But I am pleasantly surprised by this. This has been very fun to play. I mean, apart from some of the, it's the backgrounds that I think let it down a little bit. The actual effects, the ships themselves, all very good. The weaponry looks good. The icons look good. The shooting looks good. I mean, I love this with the missiles, but you see them coming after you. Oh, that's very nice. That's new. I've never seen the sort of sand skimmer boats. So yeah, it's all kind of great design, and I love how you start getting like messages popping up on the side throughout the game. And sometimes you can tell it's enemies speaking because you'll see little speech bubbles on the ships that are speaking, and they might be responding to like if they're being hit or if they've spotted you. Other times you get your support guys like telling you information about the planet or what's happening. You know, why am I doing this? Let's try out the bullet storm. Oh god! Oh, it makes me spin and shoot. That's awful. That's awful in melee. This I do like. See this effect? I just, you know, you shoot down a ship, it crash lands, you get these big smoke plumes. It does make some missions nearly impossible to do though if they crash land on like what ground target you're supposed to be hitting, because they'll just make everything, make your target invisible, because they're like a layer over the top of everything else, so the enemy and the AI can hide in them. Okay, I really should be doing the mission. I've just been sort of flying around, also been speaking, not really paying as much attention to what I'm doing. But, see, as you can see, certain enemies have particular traits, like especially these, I'm not sure what they're called. I call them small cruisers, destroyers. They can do the jump that you can do to evade. Okay, we're done. Let's get off the level. You can stay on the level and keep grinding to get equipment. That's a very nice pickup for the moveset I've got at the moment. And what do you have? Heavy plating, more health. That's very nice. But yes, I'm going to leave it here for now. I do recommend this one. If you like Risk of Rain, or you like Lufrazers. Sorry, Lufrazers. Capelli still can't say that. It's been several years and I really still cannot say the title of that game properly. I recommend this. It's not overpriced. It's really reasonable. The gameplay is spot on. The developer is still improving it. There's a lot of replayability. It's just a really good game if you've got an hour spare. I mean, the fact you can't save and continue your mission halfway through makes it probably not as accessible as some of those 10-minute play games, but you know what, I don't mind. It does what it wants to do very well, and thank you for watching. I'll catch you guys next time.